Now question number 14 we can move on to. Biologist Valentina Gómez-Bahamónand and her team have investigated two subspecies of the fork-tailed flycatcher bird that live in the same region in Colombia. But one subspecies migrates south for part of the year and the other doesn't. The researchers found that, due to slight differences in feather shape, the feathers of migratory fork-tailed flycatcher males make a sound during flight that is higher pitched than made by the feathers of non-migratory males. So let's just underline the difference. The flycatcher, they make a sound during flight, that is the migratory ones, they make a sound during flight that is higher pitched than that made by feathers of non-migratory males. So that's important, so I'm underlining. The researchers hypothesized that fork-tailed flycatcher females are attracted to the specific sound made by the males of their own subspecies. And over time, the female's preference will drive further genetic and anatomical divergence between the subspecies, which finding, if true, would most directly support Gómez-Bahamónand and her team's hypothesis. So something to support their hypothesis that these birds, the female birds, are recognizing the sounds of their own subspecies. Okay, so A says the feathers located on the wings of the migratory fork-tailed flycatchers have a narrower shape than those of the non-migratory birds, which allows them to fly long distances. B, over several generations, the sound made by the feathers of migratory male fork-tailed flycatchers grows progressively higher pitched relative to that made by the feathers of non-migratory males. C, fork-tailed flycatchers communicate different messages to each other depending on whether their feathers create high-pitched or low-pitched sounds. Or D, the breeding habits of the migratory and non-migratory fork-tailed flycatchers remain generally the same over several generations. So which of these, if it is true, can directly support Gómez-Bahamónand and her team's hypothesis? That we have to find out. So if you have said B, that is the correct one. Choice B is the best answer. Why? Because it presents a finding that, if true, would most directly support Gómez-Bahamónand and her team's hypothesis about fork-tailed flycatchers. Because the text indicates that although two subspecies of birds live in the same region, they lived in the same region in Colombia, as you can see, the tail feathers of migrating males, they make a higher pitched sound. As I underlined earlier as well, higher pitched sound than the tail feathers of the non-migrating males, as you can see. So Gómez-Bahamónand and her team, what they are hypothesizing, they are hypothesized that the female fork-tailed flycatchers, what they are attracted to, they are attracted to the specific sound made by the males of their own subspecies, which will bring about additional genetic and anatomical divergence between the two subspecies. If it were found that the pitch generated, so if we find out that as per B, if we find out that the pitch generated by the tail feathers of migrating males is getting higher over successive generations, it would indicate that the shape of the migrating subspecies tail feathers is diverging further from that of the non-migrating subspecies. If it is becoming more and more higher pitched, it means that it's getting more and more divergent. Okay, and if females continue to prefer the sounds of the males of their own subspecies, the females of the migrating subspecies will become acclimated to increasingly higher pitches over subsequent generations, which will cause further divergence between the subspecies. So if this is true, thus if it is found that the migrating male's tail feathers were producing higher pitches over time, this will support the researcher, that is Gómez-Bahamónand's hypothesis. So why is A incorrect? So let me mark that with a different color. Okay. So A is incorrect because the researcher's hypothesis is that the female flycatchers prefer the sounds produced by the tail feathers of males of their own subspecies, which will lead to further divergence between the two subspecies. But this finding is about the shape of wing feathers and how that affects long distance flights. So here it just says the feathers located on the wings of the migratory have narrower shape than those of non-migratory, and this is just talking about flying long distances, whereas that is not what we are talking about. We are talking about the female preference over here, and it's also we are talking about the tail feathers. Okay, not the wing feathers. Then C is incorrect. Why? Because C is talking about, okay, C is incorrect because the researchers' hypothesis is that the female flycatchers prefer the sounds produced by the tail feathers of males of their own subspecies, which will lead to further divergence. However, this finding focuses on how the tail feather sounds communicate different messages. This one says fork-tailed flycatchers communicate different messages to each other depending on whether their feathers create high-pitched or low-pitched sound. This doesn't address the difference between the subspecies or female preferences. This is not specifically talking about that, and this will not help the hypothesis which Gomez wants. It cannot support much. Okay, so then D, the breeding habits of the migratory and non-migratory fork-tailed flycatchers remain generally the same over several generations. This is incorrect because the researchers' hypothesis is that the female flycatchers prefer the sounds produced by the tail feathers. This is telling the it remained the same, remain generally the same. Okay, but she is saying that they are preferring their own subspecies. So incorrect, because D is incorrect because the researchers' hypothesis is that the female flycatchers prefer the sounds produced by the tail feathers of males of their own subspecies, which will lead to further divergence between the two subspecies. The finding that breeding habits haven't changed for either species does not by itself suggest anything about female preference or divergence between the two subspecies. So we cannot really say from this whether it is what she whether her hypothesis about they preferring the same subspecies will happen or not. In this, divergence will happen. Nothing can be supported with this D's this one, what is mentioned in answer choice D. Hope that's clear.